introduce yourself and say a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right. Yeah, that's right. Stephen Clarke. I usually go by Stephen Daniel Clarke. My middle name is very, very important to me. And actually, I've actually got two middle names, Stephen Daniel Michael. Michael's my dad's name. Live here in Dallas, Texas. Have done for the past 14 years, but as you can hear, I'm not a native of Texas. Grew up in South London, and spent most of my formative years there into my sort of young adulthood before I moved here. And my upbringing, lived in London, grew up in London, but I grew up the Jamaican way because my family roots and background are steeped. My mom's born in Jamaica, grandparents from Jamaica. My dad was born in London, but Jamaican parents. And so by day in school, it was classic British education. I guarantee you, by the time we got home and on the weekends, you may as well have been in, downtown Kingston. It was we were a very colourful family.
What is classic London education? School me to that.
So if I pulled out one of my two things, how we dress. If I pulled out one of my school pictures, you would have thought that's Hogwarts, right? That's
the first thing that came to my mind.
That's how we dress: tie, blazer, uniform with a badge on the blazer, which is kind of your crest. And then aside from that, I went to an Anglican, what you call elementary school, we call it primary school. And so, in the morning we had kind of what we would call here, they call it homeroom here in the US. It was like we'd have this kind of collective assembly, and you would come together, and there'll be some meditation, a little kind of word of encouragement or something by the principal or the deputy principal, and that would happen every day. And then you would have your, kind of your classes, the sports we played. By the time you get to middle and high school, it's rugby. You play football, aka soccer, very early on, and then instead of baseball, we have a game rounders. So cricket, all of those sports you think about, people really play that. Yeah, we grew up in school doing all that. Of course, we did track and basketball and things like that as well. But that was the classic upbringing. You go in London, it's public transportation mostly. Some people got a ride to school, but you'd have a walk, take a bus. Those red buses that you see on the movies.
So a couple things jump out, and I don't believe we've ever spoken about this before. Is I went to a Quaker school for elementary school, so from kindergarten through fourth, and it sounded pretty similar. Like not in the homeroom, but we would have meeting house where it was more of that meditation and silent reflection, and you could stand up and say something, and there was words of encouragement. And one thing that jumps out to me that amazes me actually is that I didn't realize how powerful that was until being an adult. Until I realized how much that meant and how special that was and how I took it for granted. But at least I had the experience to draw back on. So I am very grateful for that.
You actually make a really good point. I can resonate with the same experience, that kind of silent reflection, quiet, slowed down, just slowing down your day very early in the day and getting us ready to go learn. And they say do it early enough in the day. And you think about how fast we move now, these are some of the things I've had to incorporate into my adult life. Very recently, it took me a minute, after, burning out 2 or 3 times and, we get through the pandemic and all the different vicissitudes of life, family, and career. But now, just as you say, appreciating the ability to just pause. I do it sometimes. I'll just walk away from here. I have a walk that I do every day. I just take some minutes. Or if I have to step away from the desk and walk around, I get a moment or two to just quiet myself down. But yeah, you're right. I didn't appreciate it back then. I just thought it was boring. Now
and so did you? Another overlap here is that you played rugby. So after I played basketball in high school and a little bit in college, I played rugby in college. And I don't think we talked about that before.
No,
did you play for a long time growing up, or was this just
played my first equivalent of my first 3 years of middle school? So equivalent of here be 6th grade through 8th. So it was the first time I played, and then I played it was part of our physical education. Played other schools, so and I was skinny guy. So I wasn't the guy trying to take a hit all the time. I played on the wings. Get me the ball out there, and I'll just run.
Yeah,
I'd hopefully not get clapped out. Which you did. Yeah.
So I kind of jump back onto some things, but I want to go back into your childhood, because first of all, before, just tell the audience, like, what do you currently do in your roles? I'd like to build up to that, but I'd like to also
absolutely
talk about what you currently do in
so
your day job.
I work with Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL. I have been based here in Dallas. I work in a global role, and what I do is I work for her global CEO of leasing business as his head of innovation globally. What that really entails is we are on a very extensive and progressive digital transformation. So how we use technology with both our clients, investor clients, occupier clients, and our brokers. And so as you know, that the industry for decades has kind of incrementally evolved into tech, but now, what has been very disaggregated in terms of data, business process, analog, is now, we have to be much more progressive in terms of technology. So I help, work with our JLL technology partners around building our roadmaps. Where do we need to put investments? Some of that where we build, some of that where we buy. And then the big piece, how do we drive adoption, which is not easy in this industry. So that's one big pillar of my role. And the other is, we do a bit of M&A, which I could announce. We did a really good one recently. We're about to close. You guys probably read about that with Raise. It was really good where I was involved in that. And then the other piece is just, we're always trying to evolve our business models. So like restructuring, where should we go? Where are our growth markets, both here and overseas? What does that look like? How do we mobilize our teams around that? So helping shape that, working with our business leaders to partner with them. But we can jump into more of that, but it's quite dynamic, really interesting. And we can get into this. I haven't been a commercial real estate lifer. I kind of came into this almost past my mid-career point. So it's been really interesting jumping into an industry that's very well, it's got its culture and structures, and coming into that as an outsider.
And that's one of the things that I'm excited about getting there, and that's why I've been very excited about to have this conversation. But growing up, like, when you were in middle school, high school, like, what did you see as your career? Like, what did you aspire? Was there anything that you were like, I want to be in business, I want to be in finance? Like, what were your goals?
Yeah, my goals, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. I had a goal to either be in business, but I didn't know where. At that point in time, so like during the 80s, early 90s, we were just starting to get into things like coding at school. We had computers in school. They weren't laptops, and like there was this computer room. And I used to really enjoy going in there and doing some of that. So technology was a piece, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in that realm. But I'll jump to this. One of the things I now know, looking back, is I was always that guy put a project together, whether that was a group assignment, whether that was something I was working on for myself, something we were doing in class. So I knew somewhere in then, people who were older than me and like mentors would tell me, hey, you've got a leadership gift. And I would get nominated for programs and extra responsibilities and things like that. So I knew there was going to be this fusion of sort of business and leadership. And actually, I told myself I wanted to go into law because I just, back then it's like doctor, lawyer, and I was like, hey, they make a lot of money, but I just knew it was going to be in the realm of business, projects, but I didn't know where I was going to land. So what I tried to do is what my dad helped me with this. He goes, look, pick a broad range of subjects. So I started picking subjects in high school. He actually had me take 2 languages. I was like, why do I have to do 2? Everyone else is doing 1. He's like, no, do French and German. At that time, the EU was kind of becoming more prevalent, and they were going to the single currency. And that will just he just did a great job at broadening my worldview. My mum did as well. So travel a lot, go across different parts of Europe, as well as going back home to Jamaica. So that opened up my aperture. So I actually believed I could do anything. So for me, and I've now realized this, it was less about the role and what type of work experience I wanted. I wanted it to be somewhere I could see the world, travel, lead, create new things. And I'm now starting to see some of that manifest just in different ways as I look back.
And so was this in university, or you call it university, like in the college years that you were starting to really think about these things?
Yes, it was. And candidly, I started university and started on a law degree. And one semester into that, to my parents' pain, quit. I was like, oh my, this is not it. It was just, I had some other things going on personally, and I was like, started this law degree, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. It was the reading, it was the approach, and I just told myself this is what I wanted to do, and it was so far away from where I really wanted to be. Thankfully, after some time, I said, well, my dad said, you're not going to sit around the house and do nothing. I went out and got a job, And I started working in the travel industry. Ended up at a company that was owned by what was TWA at the time. It was UK based. We were owned by TWA. TWA got acquired by American, and then I ended up working with this tour operator owned by American Airlines Vacations UK, and I was just in sales. What happened there was the managing director and the person I reported to who ran reservations, same reoccurring stories, like, there's more in you than this. You're going to have to go back to university. Until you re-enroll, we're just going to stretch you here on the job. And so they exposed, you got me traveling to the US and different things like that. They gave you extra assignments and those types of things. And then eventually I went back and did a business degree, my bachelor's in business. And then I took couldn't hear what you call a major. I majored in business information systems.
And was that, when you saw business and business information, was it becoming more clear on what type of business that you wanted to do? Was there anything that stood out to you that, like,
yeah,
hey, this is the path that I want to take?
At the time, it was banking. And the reason I say that, sort of technology and banking, couple of things, heavy influence from my dad, who worked for one of the large UK banks in the corporate industry. He was in technology, but he was doing like project management, program management type roles. And so by virtue of that, I got to do sort of work experience, did a summer internship for a few months. So that, and then we were building up to the year Y2K. So I got a lot of, I was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of work, kind of saw a lot of problems to solve. And so I kind of started to narrow in on, like, I think I want to go into the banking industry. It was a solid industry at the time, and still is, right? And then I thought that'd be a good place for me to cut my teeth. And that's where I ended up starting out after university. I joined a program, it was like a cohort program. When you graduate, you get thousands of applicants. And I was shocked. I kind of made it through to the final round. And I remember I actually didn't tell my parents or anything that I'd made it to the final round. It was like this 2-day interview process off-site. And I got offered the job and told my parents. And I was like, I knew when I got to this assessment day, the type of problems they were asking us to solve. I'm like, yeah, it was right up my alley in terms of like some of that problem solving, projects, strategy. Hey, we're trying to get from here to there. And so that was, it started to get much clearer.
And so how long were you in that role? Like, so how long between that and going into commercial real estate?
Yeah, so they're at least probably 18 years. So like, what happened?
Okay, wow. Okay, I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, so there's this progression. Worked in the bank. I joined them as a coder initially. Was coding on this old banking platform. Imagine black screen, green font, and testing on this old kind of European common payment system. And then they rotated us. So I did a rotation in project management, and then Accenture came in to restructure the whole IT department, and I got put onto some of these special transformation projects, working with both Accenture and folks at the bank. And that what happened during that period of time, the bank sponsored me doing a postgraduate diploma in management, which is about 2/3 of an MBA. And through that, one of the professors said, have you considered consulting? Which I hadn't. Just transpired about 18 months later. So I've been with the bank about 4 years, and I got some outreach from IBM, and ended up working. They were looking for people who had industry experience, who they could bring in as consultants to work on like large projects that they were doing for various banks. And so that's where I got kind of my problem solving, strategic planning, change management, cut my teeth there. 07, 08, Lehman Brothers happens, so the banking projects start to dry up. And I ended up going to join a firm called Cognizant, who I knew as like they just did IT outsourcing, and I didn't want to do that. But they had a small group of strategic consulting, which they were building an office out of London to kind of go across Europe. And it was actually a gentleman who was an American guy from Harvard Business School, and we hit it off, and I interviewed with them, and I joined them. And it was in that period of time that I kind of expanded my experience set beyond the banking industry. And I just started consulting across various different industries, and started doing a lot of M&A, post M&A integration work. And that got me, and I started to fulfill a dream. That first gig, I was traveling to Asia. I was in the US like twice a month for like a 7-8 month period. Kind of brought us up to sort of around early 2010, when I was like, hey, do you want to move to the US? And I was like, absolutely. So I was like, yep, going to the Big Apple. And the executive who was over our global division was actually based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. And he was like, why don't you come to Dallas for a year? And after that, you can go wherever you want. And I was like, okay, I'll do it for a year. And a year's been 14 and so did that, worked at Deloitte for a while. And, so at that point I was like, okay, I want to become a consulting partner. I just saw the track, saw the pathway, but with a young family at the time, that the road warrior, like you're gone every week, Monday to Thursday, sometimes Monday to Friday. And I had to make a life decision. And I'm going to need to pivot. Wasn't sure how I loved doing this type of work, but I can't be on the road every day. This is when we weren't working virtually. Like you get out to the client and you're there, for 4 or 5 days a week. And I was fortunate and blessed enough that, through network, PepsiCo reached out and I worked with them for about 2.5 years, kind of doing similar work that I was doing for clients in-house. So there was a lot of restructuring, transformation, outsourcing and things like that. Followed a mentor to McKesson, and then that brought, spent a little bit of time there, a couple of things on my own for about a year whilst I figured out what I wanted to do. And then JLL were about to acquire HFF. And again, we'll talk about connections. And, as we talk about this, it was actually the person who hired me at PepsiCo was at JLL, just got to JLL. And we'd exchanged notes. Like, hey, I'm in the market for something. She introduced me to a peer who said, hey, we're about to make an acquisition here. Hey, you're good at this. And we talked for about 6-7 weeks. And then they brought me on here at JLL to help with the acquisition, the post-merger work to be done with HFF. And they were there, their leadership's headquartered out of Dallas. And that started the, last kind of almost 6-year journey here at JLL, which has been, we can talk about, been very decorated in terms of things I've been able to do.
Were there any, as you were maneuvering through your career and going to these different, are there any themes that you can point to, are like, this is what I learned from these opportunities and what I took from this place and brought to the other, that have been a theme, but have been consistent, like this travels, this way of thinking, this way of being is useful in every situation? Is there anything that comes out to you?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. So getting a bit clearer on I'm going to use this term calling, or what my thing is, which this is very recent as I've looked back. And so when you're good at a lot of different things, and you could throw me at most types of business problems, and I could figure out, or I could assemble a team that can go after it. I started, people say he's the strategy guy, but it's a bit more than that, because I do execution as well, and I mobilize. And so for me, oftentimes the pain point that either happens internally or with the client is being able to quickly discern what's the pain point, and there's usually a sense of urgency around it, or usually a sense of like, this feels a bit more dynamic and less cookie cut than we've done before. And I think a thing that's been a common theme for me, partly gift, and I've tried to work on it as well, is being able to quickly discern that, bring others into the problem, and then start to let solutions emerge pretty quickly. And usually what I translate that to is the stakeholders is like saying, this is a problem, I want to get unstuck. And actually I want to sprint. Like, I don't want this to be a slow burn. So my thing is like, how do I catalyze something quickly and strategically? So that's one thing. Building connections has been a big theme. My late grandfather, when we were growing up in the UK, he's from Jamaica. So he came over to the UK at times post-World War II. So it wasn't very diverse. And so, he went through here, that whole generation, they called them the Windrush generation. That was the ship they came over from the Caribbean on. Just encountered a number of different things. And what he didn't want his grandchildren to be faced with is, it's like, there's a lot of opposition out there. So his whole thing was like, live well with everybody, build connections, don't make trouble for yourself, because trouble will find you if you allow it to. And so his life ethos is just like, live as well with everyone as you can. So my dad passed it on to me. So I say connection because relationships has been key. Every transition I've either had internally in that organization or externally, I look back, I think there's only one job I've applied for of all the companies I've worked. The rest just come through some sort of connection. And I probably underestimated that until, just reflecting more recently. So connection. And then with that connection, being very deliberate about that. I have cadences like people do with their sales, with sales, and I'm going to follow up. I've got a lead, a prospect. I prospect and I manage and nurture my stakeholder relationships. I try to. So that, I was on a call earlier on today, a group of us who knew each other from the UK, we hadn't spoken in a while, put it on the calendar. I said, all right, guys, we're going to meet again in about 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm very deliberate about that because time slips by. As much as we have social media and all these other things, there's nothing like this. I was telling my wife the other day about, we were going to be doing this. And so, I met him through Derek Jarvis, and, that we had that connection. I think you're in town, and we met, those things that have been very near and dear to me, and I've tried to be very deliberate about that. Those are a few of the things.
Well, okay, I want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. But you mentioned something before, because I think that's hugely important, and I want to expand on that. You mentioned something before about your ability to find like where the challenge is, the problem, and then do a sprint through it. And you have an innate ability, you have a knack for being able to discern things quickly and do that. Where do you see that like emerge? Like how in your life do you see that, not just work, but in life of like, we got to take care of this. This is a challenge. This is important. We need to do that. Can you elaborate on that? I just want to hear more about that, because I think that's very important, because a lot of times people will let things linger or just go past, but being able to discern those things and work through them is so crucial.
Yeah, that's great. Started to see that pretty early on. Some of it, I think, quite naturally by what I was exposed to kind of growing up. Growing up in sort of an inner city environment, you have to be quite resourceful. You have to think fast on your feet. So, some of anyone's kind of listening to this, and you think, kind of what's urban London lifestyle like on the bad side. Go watch Top Boy on Netflix. Pretty violent, but it kind of gives you a good picture. I wasn't one of those guys, but I could be in and around them, and you picked up a number of things around. This is how you think fast on your feet. This is how you think, when you're in a particular situation. And so some of it was a bit survival. The other piece of it was I just watched our very large extended family, despite whatever we were faced with, be able to kind of push through problems and get things resolved, come together. It was a very much of a community lifestyle. And then I will fast forward to about middle and high school, and this kind of speaks to some of the leadership piece, was and it happened in sports. So we would have these inter-grade tournaments, whether it be soccer, basketball, track, cricket, rugby. I was an all-rounder when it came to sports, but I was not an all-star by any stretch. I can hold my own, but I wasn't the best player. Probably wasn't even top 10 or top 5. But one of the things that I noticed this pattern start to emerge is if we had one of those tournaments across the different sports, I'd raise my hand to like, hey, they rotate the captain every year. All right. And any time, I was captain, we would win. And what started, and it wasn't because we were the best team in the grade. I started to have this knack. Hey, I need you to play over here. And I know you want to play up top, but you're really good. You'll be really good out here on the right. Watched you. Being able to engage people and say, think this is the play, and being able to put a playbook together. So I started to see very early, I could see patterns, I could see themes, and then bringing people into that kind of way of thinking and kind of, saying, look, this is what I think, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, pivot. And that's sort of carried forward in terms of studies, carried forward into places where I worked as well. And I just thought everybody could do that until more recently, kind of in the last few years at work, some of the, people say, and I posted about this the other day, well, what's your role? And something that's very hard to describe, because I pride myself on just being able to see things from multiple perspectives, be able to put my shoes in this, my feet in the shoes of the stakeholder. And I'm team JLL. Like, how does JLL's client get the best outcome from here? Put ego to the side and bring others into the equation, and but I'm able it's this thing to be able to see the pattern and jot those down, and then use that history and those data points to help me with the next one. So usually I've got something playing out. I've seen this before. I've seen something similar. Why don't we start here?
Well, I'll give you a little backstory on why I think this is so amazing to me to hear you say that, because we've been on calls and, group calls, video, Zooms, and we've met in person, and you're a smart, engaging guy. You got all the tools, and it's great. Like, I was like, oh man, I really like Steven. We got along.
Thank you, man.
It wasn't, of course, but it wasn't until you led that BCREN call where I saw all your talents on full display. Maybe not all, right? I don't want to limit you to that, but it was like, you've always been, a presence in the meetings and all the calls and all the times you spent together. But it was when you had the opportunity to lead, when you were given the stage, it was like, oh, there he is. It was amazing to see how you were so organized, you were so deliberate, you were so the cadence, the pace, the everything, the follow up, and I had never seen that on full display until then. So you saying that makes perfect sense. And
glad it does.
I mean, it was really impressive to see that. And then one of the things that I would like to hear, your opinion on this is, like, I can only imagine and put my feet in these shoes, right? Like, consider yourself a leader, but not necessarily being there in your career yet, and not being in a leadership position, but still finding yourself leading in different ways. Do you feel like you've broken some kind of ceiling recently in your own understanding of who you are and what you bring to the table, and the understanding of what you can do, and people are recognizing that now? Like, has there been a specific time or place that you've had this awakening, if you will?
I have, and I would say you're absolutely right. It's been definitely the last couple of years. One of the things that thankfully has helped me, especially both internally and externally, is having sponsors. So I've had a couple of sponsors here internally at very senior levels of JLL for a few different reasons, who have just, given me a stage and opportunity to go try something. So my current leader I work for, his predecessor kind of tapped me up very early, late 2021, early 2022, and says, hey, Steve, I've got this thing I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to reboot something we're doing globally. Can you take a look at this for me? He hadn't worked with me before. He heard some good things, but he gave me enough runway to say, hey, this is kind of how I want it to go. Kind of took it, ran with it, and came back to him, and he's like, oh, this is much further along than I thought. And he kind of gave me more runway. Fast forward, within 2-3 months, I was pretty much working for him full time, which then set up, kind of gave me this. One, it gave me this exposure more than what I'd had prior. Which I'd had some good exposure, but it's opened up the exposure. And then actually me not realizing at the time that, at some point he was going to transition, I now work for his successor in an even more expanded capacity. So there was this realization that opportunity met kind of support to try and even fail in a couple of areas, or get some guidance and coaching on some things. So that definitely started to happen. And to your point about getting clearer about value, I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years inventorying, like, what I'm good at. I have a mentor who told me, like, every quarter, told me this back in 2020. He said, start writing down every quarter, like, your accomplishments and what you want to do next. Like, just said, like, it was so that's because you're going to have a year-end review. You're going to look back. You don't want to be scrambling in December trying to figure out what I accomplished all year. So I got into this cadence, and that's, of just inventorying what I've done, what I enjoyed, what I learned. And so I started to get some anchors around kind of who I am and what I bring, my ability to connect, my ability to catalyze things, my ability to create, synthesize complex problems, and then bring other people into it, how to level the stakeholder playing field in a way that respects everyone's position and respects everyone's realm of responsibility. But I try and come in very frictionless. So again, I wear a JLL jersey, or if I'm working with someone outside of JLL, some other little projects I do. Hey, I'm part of your group, part of your team, and we're going to get this done. But there has been that realization, and that's been really important. And I think we all go through that. We make transitions, we make pivots, but being able to get just a little bit clear on what I have to offer, who I am, what I bring to the table, what do I stand for. They sound really like straightforward things to know, but for me, they've evolved over time. And so I've kind of been, kind of wrapping my head around this, getting much more coordinated and aligned internally. And that's what's enabled me to be a bit extraordinary. Things that you saw that day, probably wouldn't have been able, could do that. But that's taken practice, practicing, facilitating, getting feedback, practicing, being in those situations and asking people like, how did that go? Is there any way I can do that different and better?
And so by taking inventory, are there any things that you do in your practice, whether it's, we spoke before about going for walks, and you mentioned writing things down. Is there a specific schedule? We use the word cadence, like that you're journaling, that you're meditating, that you're walking, that you're doing these things. Is there specific things that you do?
So there are specific cadences and then places where I find it easier to do it. So oftentimes I just find it easier to inventory and reflect on that when I'm not like sat at a desk. Be on a walk during my drive. But sometimes it comes, I'm a movie buff, so sometimes I'm watching a movie and I'm seeing themes. So what more recently, I'll do a couple of things. I'll do impromptu, and I'll just use the recorder. I've got an Otter AI app. I'll record it in there, get it to transcribe. So I've got both the recording and the transcription. And one of the things I found quite really powerful is hearing writing it down and journaling I do, but hearing it in your own voice is very powerful as well. And I underestimate the power of hearing myself, affirm myself, and speak well of myself, or what I've enjoyed or what I'm passionate about, and hearing me playing it back in my own voice has been like life-changing.
So what's this app that you use for this?
.ai. Yeah. There are a few of them out there, but people often use it in these video calls, and it records and then it transcribes.
Mm-hmm.
I use it to just to journal, capture my thoughts, and then I also do written journaling. That's not daily. That tends to be more kind of every 2 to 3 days. That's a lot of gratitude, processing difficult problems. But in terms of that clarity on who I am, what I'm experiencing, what I'm enjoying, a lot of that I'm doing by voice.
All right. Because this is tools, talents, and technique. So it's the technique and the tool that you just mentioned. So way to check those boxes.
I would, for those who are comfortable, I would encourage just try it a few times. Just if you're Android, I don't know what app that is because I'm team iOS, but on the app, just use the voice note and just capture yourself a short voice note. The other thing I do, I've got a couple of groups that I have like on WhatsApp. Some people use the Marco Polo app, but I use WhatsApp quite a bit. And I have a few guys that I just chop it up with, and we might be going through a book, or we might be, going through a particular seasonal thing. And this is quite recent, but we're very deliberate about sharing our thoughts via video. So it's not just texting them in, get on the video, no more than 2 minutes, getting us to, into a cadence of sharing our thoughts and sharing what we're learning, sharing what we're gleaning, bouncing off each other. You can respond back to someone's initial post via, a text message. But I share that because there's also some power in doing that in a community of like-minded people. You don't have to be the same gender, you don't have to share the same worldview, but being able to share some of that learning with people who are like-minded, who want to progress, want to grow. It takes a bit of vulnerability to do that, but you start to forge connections, and out of that, you start learning more about each other. That's where you start to see opportunities, even to sometimes partner together on things and work together as well. So those are some of the other cadences I've tried to put. So it's not key. Like the point I'm making is not doing it by yourself.
Yeah, and that community and bringing the connections and meaningful, deliberate connections.
Yeah.
So let me go back to what your day job and working at JLL and what you're seeing. Is there anything that stands out that you're seeing as, I guess, not like a trend, but a theme that you see, like where this commercial real estate is going or where things are headed? And just what are you seeing right now in your day-to-day?
So, notwithstanding we're, at least in the US, we're a few weeks away from I think we said the last 2-3 elections have been the biggest one, but I think, again, this one was, being that it's seemingly quite close, I think that's going to be pivotal. But that kind of a juxtaposed next to what we're seeing with the acceleration, technology, data, the AI piece. Many people have said it. I'm on the same train, which is there are things that I do and that our teams are doing that I've done on the day-to-day in terms of synthesizing data, getting certain business processes processed, that AI capabilities are able to leapfrog and accelerate some of that ability to integrate systems, meet clients where they are. So I think that technology evolution and acceleration we're seeing. I think the other thing, is what clients want and client decision making and buyer behavior. It's not what it was sort of 5 years ago. Yes, there's some things that are still very stable about the industry, but most, either if you're an investor or an occupier client or you're an owner and people want us to help them see around the corner, and be an advisor, be a partner, which we know, which is intuitive to us, but especially in our capital markets or at least in business, where even in our work dynamics is just highly transactional. The buyer doesn't want a transactional engagement. They want a partner and they're consolidating providers. So, especially on some of the larger accounts, they'll chop it up between us and our competitors. And some of them are trying to consolidate some of that now. So they're looking for a partner who can do full life cycle services, which the big 3-4 of us could do that. But they want that done in a way that's novel, that's intentional, that's deliberate, not just in it for the deal, but you're going to help me win. And then I would say, bridging to kind of me coming into the industry, I think the personnel profile is evolving. So I remember, I'm going to be candid, I remember coming, like my first few months working here at JLL, hadn't been exposed to commercial real estate at all. By that point, I hadn't just come out of college. I was like good 18 years kind of into my career. And I remember going to this lunch with a senior leader here. I was sitting down at this table and I didn't know what anybody was talking about. And I was like, this is a secret society I did not know existed.
Yeah.
And this level of connection of this person knew this person, and they would talk about who they knew from the football game. This person's goddaughter was, and I was like, goodness me, this is wild. This is different. I remember debriefing with another gentleman on the drive back to the office to say, hey, help me understand this. I share all that to say there's still aspects of the industry, like many others, that people grow into an industry, they grow with an industry, it's quite, their circles are aware of it. But I'm seeing a lot more junior talent coming, and you guys have been working, through the BCREN, just a different profile of talent, both mid-career and early career, and even some of our more senior hires that, our executive runs our UK business from a leasing perspective, and she's been running EMEA. She was from outside the industry. She joined us maybe in the last few years. So that's another trend I'm seeing, just an infusion of non-traditional commercial real estate talent. And for some, it works really well. For some, it's organ rejection because culture as well. But I'm seeing more of that, and I think that's going to become even more important for our clients as well, and just trying to figure out really complex problems as you learn tech, sustainability, just what's happening with rates and things like that. Just having different minds, those who know the industry, know the players, have got the connections, but others, those of us who think about a problem a little differently and some other experience. I'm thinking another one of our executives came from another consumer goods and is now running our PDS business as well as some of our other parts of our client group business as well.
Yeah, there's so many complex challenges, not all just in the world, right? But in commercial real estate and how that reflects. And so, they're going to take unique challenges are going to call for unique answers and solutions. And I feel like that's one of those things that I saw in your ability to do that, to take these complex problems and really boil it down and pull out what are those major aspects that you need to focus on, or what are those key points that you can go the furthest with by solving them. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give you it's funny, some board here, I use this in meetings, and sometimes I don't always use these words, but these 3 I's, and they're not mine. I got that it's someone else's framework, going in, like, since we last to get strategic alignment, what issues are there? What new insights do we have? What ideas do you have? And use it. So those 3 I's, like issues, problems, bottlenecks, mistakes, what we're observing, what new insights, what new information do we have? What's happened since we last met? what happened on this particular account or with this client or with that particular project, and then giving people a chance to share new ideas, like what we do going forward, and infusing that into discussions. And so what I was not over about is even using some of that forum that you saw me facilitate is kind of ahead of time. I was drawing insights and I'm trying to understand the issues and ideas, and you bring that into kind of a main discussion, give everybody a voice, but at the same time, trying to lead people down a path like what's doable, what's achievable. But then during that, part of my job is also to stretch the thinking. I was like, are we sure this is where we want to be? Could it be more than this? Tell me more about that. So what started to happen in that meeting, I watched you all suddenly say, this could be more than what it's been to this point. You start to re-energize folks, and then offline take their assignments and they start to drive those, focusing on those and things like that as well.
So I read something recently about, I believe it was Jeff Bezos and how he holds meetings and he always speaks last. I believe it was Jeff Bezos. I'm pretty sure it is. But he always speaks last because he doesn't want to be the one, because if he says something, then other people don't want to go against it or whatever. So there's a technique there. Is there anything that you use, and when you're facilitating these discussions or you're doing it, is there anything that jumps out further than what you already pointed out, that you're like, this is a framework that I've used, whether you got it from somewhere else? So like, what are some other things that you find useful?
So I love you mentioned listening. And this is not even just someone who does what I do, but if you're a team lead, or you run an account team, or you're a client team, or you're working with your client, the listening piece it's really key. I kind of grew up in an era where especially you're coming up, college, university, you kind of and in consulting, it was like you made a name for yourself. You had a signature voice, and you had the play, you had the best PowerPoint, and you started move through the ranks, and so that was also synonymous with the person who had the best thing to say or the most to say. And actually, that's not always true. And so one of the things, the art of listening is key, because as a leader or or anyone on a team, doesn't have to be a leader, your ability to kind of use that time to kind of do a 360 on kind of what's going on, capture your notes and kind of start to see the threads is really key. One of the things I do, and again, this is not mine, but I'll ask 4 questions. Let's take where we are right now, given the particular issue. What's right? RIGHT, just people. I think I did that with you guys on the prep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's wrong, what's missing, and what's confusing. You start to emerge. What that helps you do is like, what do we need to keep doing? What might we need to eliminate? What do we need to clarify? What do we need to add? And that 4-question piece, it just gets the group talking, it gets stakeholders engaging and thinking beyond the thing that's right immediately. They can think about things immediately in front of them. They can also detach from it a little bit and make it a little more objective, be very fact-based. So I try to do that, or things like that. And oftentimes as well, I've actually become much more PowerPoint-like. Just because like what we're doing now, there's no slides, we're just engaging one-on-one. There's a place for slides, but Bezos is the same. He likes this memo thing as well. I'm not sure if I think, that was something he implemented at Amazon. He said, I don't want slides. We're going to have like this 5 to 6 page memo. There's pros and cons of that as well. But the reason I say that is one of the things I try to do is throw out a notion or a concept, and especially when there's a lot more virtual meetings, get people talking and engaging and not fixated on what you've got on the screen. I think Jobs was great at this. The late Steve Jobs was great. His visuals are amazing. I take some of my cues from him. He's like, very impactful, but it's really in his narrative and his ability to communicate. And I think behind the scenes, he was doing a lot of listening as well. But that's a really important technique I've grown into again the last couple of years, and more so in this current role, because there are so many voices and opinions, and it's a very dynamic landscape. The role is global, so I try and spend as much time as I do listening than I do communicating, and actually more so, kind of train myself to listen more. And a bit like Bezos, I'll speak less, not always last, but I'll try and speak less, and that's not because I don't have lots to say. I'm always talking and I'm not listening, and that's me, and I got that feedback as well.
When you mentioned those 4 questions, what's wrong, what's not, when you ask those 4, if you were to just in the conversations that you have and the meetings you facilitate, which of those four quadrants seems to be the most engaging? Like do you feel like certain teams, like, and maybe it's situational, but is there one like everybody like focuses too much on what's right and not enough on what's wrong, or is there anything that really jumps out to you?
Yes, a lot of people gravitate to typically what's wrong, because it's kind of usually not always top of mind, but it's a very black and white question. What's wrong? We don't have this. We don't have enough budget. We can't do this. We can't do that. So that one usually gets people usually have a longer list there. Sometimes I find that a bit harder because I'm more of a glass half full person. So I gravitate more to what's right. The one where you get a ton of engagement and has a really interesting discussion is around what's confusing. And that's because confusion is about, typically what you need to do is bring clarity. And it can be really hard in this environment. Things move so quickly. The problems are complex. Some things are quite straightforward to solve. That's where you could have some really interesting dialogue around bringing clarity to things that are confusing, or having a dialogue around what is it we need to make clearer. Clarity enables you to accelerate in a number of different ways. And the challenge is now in this very kind of volatile environment and very kind of complex, dynamic environment, clarity lasts for a moment, at least on the surface of things. And you've often got to move with a lack of clarity, clear clarity, but you do have to have conviction.
I'd imagine, and just hearing you work through that, and I'm processing this myself, I'd imagine that dialogue that comes from what's confusing is that through that, there could be some things that are right, but you were just confused. Or they could be wrong, but you didn't realize that they were wrong because you were confused. And that tends to open up these other conversations in those other quadrants.
It does. And it often it helps you see another vantage point. Like, for example, if I hold this up, what do you see?
You were holding up a Fiji water bottle.
You see Fiji. So you see the words Fiji. What else do you see on the front of the bottle?
Flower.
See? I'll tell you what I see. I see a barcode, Earth's finest water, a bunch of small print with minerals, something about electrolytes. It's the same bottle. You see this, I see that. And sometimes all you need to do in a meeting like that is you're just allowing people to see. Now I see what you saw. You're seeing what I'm seeing. And so it's seeing things from all sides. I was explaining this to one of my sons recently. It's an old movie. I think it's called Vantage Point. So I said it was the same thing that happened, and everyone told that story from a few different vantage points. And a lot of the time, as you said, the ability as a team leader, as a business leader, as a client lead, to be able to just have that dexterity to see things from a few different sides. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but getting that 360 view, it just allows you to make decision with a bit more confidence, hopefully.
What are things, let's use, I'm not going to use all four quadrants, but what are you, or let's change it up a little bit. What are you most excited about in your life? Whether it's business, whether it's life, like what are you looking forward to? And we're recording this early October 2024.
Yes.
And the U.S. election is coming up in a few weeks. We'll probably release this podcast in mid-October. But that being said, I want to give people a frame of reference for when we're having this conversation.
Yes, that's good. So I'll lead with it was a couple of elections back, and there was an outcome, and I remember the next day saying that there were different opinions and what was good about it, what wasn't, and I said, look, we need leadership at all levels of society, right? From the family, marriages, schools, like we need all the way up to the White House. So yes, understood. We will have a preference as who sits in that seat. Here's the reality: we need leadership at all levels. So I start with that, and what I'm most excited about, and I think maybe we touched on it earlier on, is this notion. I'm most excited about working on mission. What I mean by that is, as I used that Avenger analogy earlier, is that with the Avengers, what I love about them is they each one of them on their own has an amazing skill set, depth, superpowers. It's fictional, but I think each one of us in our own right is an Avenger. We have gifts and talents and things like that. The key with them is that there are problems bigger than that one Avenger can solve on their own. So mission brings them together. And so I'm most excited in this season of my life, the world, where we are. There are things bigger than us that no one group or no one organization can solve. I see the day where, like, we're going to solve a client's problem jointly with one of our competitors. Like that's missional based. Yes, we're all trying to make money. We've got shareholders of it, but that's what the world needs. People who come together on mission, making the world. It sounds esoteric based. That is exactly what I'm most excited about, and I'm seeing it happen around me in lots of little ways. I saw it happen with you guys. You and Derek, 2020 mission brought you guys together. Missions, and some of your entrepreneurial endeavors. So that as a capstone, just I'll use the Avengers everywhere, just coming together on mission in different industries, different parts of society. I was in a school district meeting earlier on. We were just talking about some real big opportunities with parents and people, decision makers from all different parts of life. We brought all our perspectives together. The school district on their own would have been able to come up with some of those solutions. I learned things about how they make decisions that will make me a better parent in terms of how I engage and appreciate what educators and the educational district is doing for our children and our students. So that's what I'm most excited about. I think there's tons of opportunity. And I'm at a stage in life where I'm just like, just go after it. Put it out there, go after it. That's where I am on it. I know. Yeah. Hopefully that resonates, that makes sense. And
it makes perfect sense. And, again, like I touched on before, to see you and what you do and how you do it in these meetings. And I feel like I have a front row seat to watch you come into your own. And maybe before I met you, you were already like on your path and doing that, but it's been really impressive to see. And I'm excited to see you continue to evolve and make your imprint, make your Avenger contribution to the mission.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And that meeting was a moment for you guys, and it was for me as well. I was very willing. It was exciting. I believed in it. But we have those moments we all do in life where, like, you're working on something, you're participating in something, and it just unlocks something that you're like, hey, that really meant something to me. And it helps you. But one of the things I call that is just finding your signature in the world. And that has two dimensions: your voice and your contribution for others, but also, being able to demonstrate and be distinct within yourself and be very clear on who you are and what you stand for. When you can do both of those together, you find your signature.
Yeah, and that signature, I think that's a great point. And one of the things I really enjoy about this podcast is, one, I enjoy having these conversations with people that I admire, that I respect, and we get to share some of this with the world at whatever level stage it is. Again, I'm no Oprah, I'm no Joe Rogan, but the thing is, like, when we have these moments, and it's like, I enjoy doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it because I enjoy it, and hopefully the people that are listening, that are participating, enjoy it as well. But now that I know what that feels like, I know that experience. You mentioned the other entrepreneurial endeavors, like the glasses, the ranges project that I'm working on. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever done. Like, I love it. I just can't stop thinking about it, and the people that I'm meeting along the way. But now that I know what that feels like, there's no turning back.
Yeah,
like I will be doing this type of stuff for the rest of my life till my heart stops beating. So finding that signature, whatever that is, and again, it's not ever exact.
No,
there's an essence there that I'm tapped into, and I love it.
Love it. I'm happy for you. Yeah, as I've watched you do that, I mean, I'm like, amazing. Just so forward thinking, so novel, so determined, so differentiated, and it's inspiring, and it's motivating as well. And the thing is, you said, what now you've experienced, it's like, once you know, you can't unknow either, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because it's not always rainbow and sunshine. It's hard too, but it's worth it. It's so worth it.
Amazing.
All right. Well, hey, Steve, thank you so much. So one last thing, is there anything you want to share, like any how to contact you, to follow you on your socials, anything you want to put out there?
The best place is where I am most is on LinkedIn. So if you put the link somewhere, just Cognizant reached me there, and then standing by for coming soon, going into the new year. If folks chat me there, I'm going to start putting some stuff out a bit more. You've noticed I've been kind of posted a bit more, but that's video content coming through and some other things as we go round out the year, and then going into 2025. My catchphrase is like, all right, Clarke, going live in 25.
All right. I love it, man. Well, listen, if there's anything I can do to support you or help along the journey, you got it. Anything you need.
Appreciate you, Dustin.
All right. Thank you, Stephen.